And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be doing a quick recap of all the games that went down last night. I already did a recap of like the two big games for me. The Knicks going up against Philly and the Clippers going up against Minnesota. Minnesota, as the meme would say. But now, we are going to go into another big game, which is the Indiana Pacers beating the Oklahoma City Thunder 121 to 111. Now, I say this about OKC every single time. Like, they win against some really competitive teams, but then they find themselves losing against teams that they shouldn't be losing to. And the Pacers are one of those teams. Now, the Pacers, again, they are a hit or miss team. If they are absolutely on with the three ball, if they are hitting their shots, no one is really going to be able to beat them. However, if they aren't hitting their shots, that's when they become a weak team. And they become a weak team because they do not have any type of defense to fall back on. I say this every single time on the show segment when talking about the Pacers, but it becomes much more apparent whenever you watch them play. They just do not give an effort on defense. And realistically, why would you want to give that much of an effort on defense when you can just put all your effort in on offense? That's the thinking that a lot of these players have, and I don't agree with it whatsoever. Because if your offense isn't there, what do you do? Right now, Tyrese Halliburton, he is not the player that everyone thought that he was in the in-season tournament. The in-season tournament had everybody fooled. He is not the player that people thought. He's a great passer. Yes, he's a great playmaker. But in terms of scoring the ball, no, he is not there whatsoever. And you notice that the talk about Halliburton has died down. You haven't really heard much of Halliburton, have you? He ended the game with 18 points, 8 of 15 from the field. Wasn't bad, but then again, this is coming from a player who was like being hyped up as being better than Trae Young, who averages 26 while still averaging the exact same amount of assists. Like, where in what world is he better than Trae Young? In what world? It does not make any sense to me. And he was talked about as being one of the best point guards in the league right now. Like, I'm sorry, the best point guard in the league doesn't average, like, he averages a load of assists. Yes, I will give him that. He is a phenomenal player. But compared to someone like Trae Young, compared to someone like Shai, compared to someone like Luka, Steph Curry, those guys are great point guards. Those guys are great point guards. And some people might not consider Steph Curry a point guard, but more on that in that fourth segment. So they ended the game. Every single one of the starters ended the game with double-digit points for the Pacers. Aaron Nesmith ended the game with 15. Halliburton, like I said earlier, ended the game with 18. Pascal Siakam also ended the game with 18. Miles Turner ended the game with 24, along with 4 blocks as well, which is pretty impressive. And Andrew Nembhard ended the game with 14 points. Now, that was obviously, like, this is a common theme for the Pacers. Every single time they get their star players and their starting lineup to get in double-digit points, they always push the ball up the court, every single time. And it's not like this Thunder team really played that bad. I mean, Shai ended the game with 30 points again and 10 rebounds, which is really impressive. I mean, seeing Shai get 10 rebounds when there's someone like Chet on the field is really impressive. Ended the game 12 of 27 from the field. He was 1 for 7 from 3. So, one of the things about Shai's game that is really different is the fact that he doesn't really shoot that many threes. He is a mid-range assassin. That's sort of where his best shots come from. That's where he's most efficient at, in that mid-range. And it's a lost art in this league. Like, actively hunting for mid-ranges is a lost art. And some of the best players actually hunt for mid-ranges. Like, And that's how they get a lot of efficient and easy shots. I mean, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, they're considered the two best shooting guards. Dwayne Wade, they all played in that mid-range area, and they've all been doing that same thing. So with that in mind, I mean, looking for mid-ranges like now at least is a little bit concerning, because like the mid-range, again, like the math behind it is that it's an inefficient shot. You're getting a layup, like you're getting as many points as a layup, but you're shooting the ball from farther, and it's not as consistent. So with that in mind, like, it's really tough to like assess whether these shots are going to be good shots or whether they're going to be consistent shots come playoff time. Because that's the real reason why a lot of these teams don't like taking those mid-ranges. Because, like, it's a different shot 9 out of 10 times. It's not as easy as, like, committing a player to muscle memory shooting in a corner. Because when a defender is in the corner, or, like, when someone is in the corner, when a shooter is in the corner, shooting, I said corner, like, 50 times, getting ready to shoot, he already has what type of shot. He already has the shot that he's going to shoot in his mind. Like, he already knows how much strength he needs, where he needs to arc the ball, those kind of things. Obviously, like, nobody's perfect, so nobody is going to hit that corner three every single time. But in the mind of the offense and in the mind of the player, he knows exactly what shot he's going for. Now, when you're taking mid-ranges like Shy, you don't entirely know what shot you're going to be going for. Are you going to go for the mid-range in the elbow? Are you going to go for a deeper mid-range? And the shot changes every time, while at the same time still only getting you 2 points. And that's sort of been the logic behind, like, the mid-range and why it's been an unreliable shot and why teams don't really like taking it anymore. So come playoff time, not entirely sure if this is the best approach. Chet Holmgren ended the game with 15 points and 13 rebounds. A lot of people like to comment on his efficiency, and his efficiency being the reason why he's Rookie of the Year. Well, 6 of 16 from the field. He ended with more shot attempts than points. Victor Wembanyama's better. But I digress. So, with this game, I mean, it obviously still raises questions for the Thunder. Like, what is their true ceiling? We have no idea what their true ceiling is, because they keep beating these great teams, but then they end up losing to some mediocre teams. And it's like, why are you losing to these mediocre teams after beating such great teams? It does not make any sense to me. And it's like, it really is, like, it's concerning. Like, their most recent disappointing loss was against the Lakers. I mean, after beating the Suns in March. Like, on Sunday, March 3rd, they beat the Suns 118 to 110. Then they go to the LA and they end up losing to the Lakers. How does that work? Granted, might be because they came off of a back-to-back. So coming off of back-to-back games is like really, it's a difficult task. It's not something that's easy. However, did they come off a back-to-back in this game? No, they did not. They did not come off a back-to-back in this game. So there was no excuse for them losing to this Pacers team. Moving on to some other games. Oh, you guys are gonna love this one. The Bucks ended up losing again to the Kings. Now, the Kings, they're full of a bunch of snubs. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. These Kings are full of snubs. De'Aaron Fox got snubbed. Domantas Sabonis also got snubbed. He was top 10 in the MVP ladder, and he didn't even get an All-Star appearance. Like, this is why the fan voting needs to be abolished, because nobody in the fan votes wanted Sabonis in that All-Star game. Why? He's a triple-double, he's a double-double machine, and arguably a triple-double machine as well. Does not make any sense to me, and it shows that a lot of these people don't know basketball. Sabonis ended the game 22 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists. De'Aaron Fox, also having a phenomenal season, also got snubbed at the point guard position, by the way. Ended the game with 29 points, 7 assists, and 6 rebounds. And Malik Monk, who comes off the bench, ended the game with 25 points, shot 9 of 19 from the field. I believe that him and De'Aaron Fox, they combined for 54 points. So, really, the fact that these two players, like, and Sabonis, like, if you want to add Sabonis in there, I mean, I wouldn't really want to add Sabonis in there because that just would be unfair, like, to that scoring list. Now, Harrison Barnes, he ended the game with 16 points, 6 of 12. Kevin Huerter ended the game 4 of 10 from the field. And overall, dominant win for the Kings. They shot 45% from 3, 53% from the field, and that's sort of been like the difference maker compared to the Bucks in this game. The Bucks ended up shooting 7 for 39 from 3. Damian Lillard ended the game 2 of 12. He is a problem. It's come to the point where Damian Lillard is a problem to this team. Right now, he's just shot chucking. He's not doing he's not making consistent enough production for this team. And I'm starting to think that it might be because there's a little bit of pressure. There's a lot more pressure and a lot more expectations coming in for Damian Lillard in this season because he's on the Bucks and because he's on a great team. So, with this in mind, it makes sense how he's struggling to shoot the ball really efficiently. I mean, 2 for 12 from the field. Like, and this is, I'm sorry, but this bad shooting, it's been going on the entirety of this season. And I blame it on Doc Rivers a lot of the time because he doesn't make the adjustments that he needs to. But Damian Lillard is not out of the woods when it comes to the reason why this Bucks team is not where they should be, isn't where they should be. It is a major problem. I'm sorry, it is a big problem because this terrible shooting is hurting the team more than it is helping the team. And on Portland, there was really no pressure and he could take whatever shot he wants. But now he needs to be consistent. He's not being consistent whatsoever. He shouldn't have been an all-star this year. A lot of people don't, after looking at his numbers compared to Trae Young's numbers, Jalen Brunson's numbers, all of those numbers, he should not have been an all-star starter this year, but I digress. Giannis Antetokounmpo ended the game 30 points, 13 rebounds. He does everything in his power that he can to try to make this Bucks team win, and it's just they cannot do it. And it's infuriating. Fire Doc Rivers. He's going to be fired at the end of this season, most likely. I would fire him at the end of this season. I'd find a completely new coach because I am sorry, cannot stand him. That's just me, though. And, again, nobody shot well in this game. And it's like, why are they taking so many shots if they're not shooting well? But they should not have lost that game. Now, let's move on to another team in the Eastern Conference that's better. The Boston Celtics. They ended the game 123-107 against the Utah Jazz. 51 wins this season. I'm not entirely sure if I mentioned this in the last podcast, but they were the first team to reach 50 wins. And the cherry on top is that Jason Tatum ended this game with 38 points. So he went off this game in a game that they absolutely needed him to go off. Derek White also went off, ended the game with 24 points. Drew Holiday, 16 points. There was no Kristaps Porzingis in this game, but that's absolutely no problem. This team has enough offense and enough defense to produce. Also, no Jaylen Brown in this game, so they really needed that. They really needed that sort of that performance from Jason Tatum in order to keep them afloat. Even though this Utah Jazz team is rebuilding, not really much that needs to be touched upon with this game. Because, again, the Utah Jazz, they're rebuilding. They do have great pieces on offense, but their defense is kind of suspect. Which is ultimately what really hurts the Utah Jazz. And what hurts a lot of teams. Because their offense is there. It's just the defense is really, really bad. And I don't really need to talk much about this game because it's it's a top team going up against a rebuilding team. I mean, we expected these kind of results from Boston. And there's nothing really much that needs to be said. Next, we're going to talk about the Wizards going up against the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, two bottom-feeding teams. So, now, recently, I haven't really talked much about the Wizards on this podcast. So Jordan Poole, he's been on the bench, and he's been coming off the bench, and he's still the same player that everyone expects him. He's still the exact same player. He is an arrogant and cocky basketball player who sees himself as the best player on the floor every second of the day. And there's nothing wrong with seeing yourself as the best basketball player on the floor. You just have to play like it, and he doesn't play like it. This is far from what we thought he was going to do on the Wizards, because, again, he has the green light to take whatever kind of shot he wants. Now, the fact that he's not being consistent with those shot selections is ridiculous to me. Like, he's infuriating to watch. There was this one moment in the season where he literally just walked up from, like, he shot the ball from literally half court. He literally just walked up the court and just threw it up there like he's Steph Curry, and it didn't even hit the rim. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, do you practice that shot? Last I checked, you are not Steph Curry. Last I checked, you are not LeBron James on a heat check. But, like, I just don't know, like, what's the thinking behind them. I really don't. Because I don't think we've ever seen a player that has the green light to shoot, that's been talked about as being the next man up, who has his own team. I don't think I've ever seen him get worse and get benched. I don't think that's ever happened. And there's so much money to his contract. Right now, the Wizards are in a very difficult situation. And, I mean, Kyle Kuzma, he's still, like, performing. He's still a baller, but he's not going to be enough for this team to make it over the hump. Now, I really think it would be funny if this Wizards team ends up losing to the Pistons. I think it would be hilarious if they end up losing, because remember, Kyle Kuzma, he tweeted in the beginning of the season, just don't be that team, referencing the Pistons. And so far, the Wizards have the exact same record as the Pistons. They are bad. Not really much that needs to be talked about with this game. No Ja Morant. I mean, Ja Morant's been out for the entirety of the season, so most of the season. So, like, no problem for this Grizzlies team going up against the Wizards team that's really struggling on the defense and really struggling on the offense. So, not much that needs to be said. Last game, before we wrap this segment up, is the Spurs going up against the Houston Rockets. It was a relatively low-scoring game, 103-101. Victor Wembanyama ended the game with 13 and 10. Now, this team with the Spurs, it's like they're up and down. They have their moments, but most of the time they have their bad moments, and they're just 1 point guard away from making this team a little bit more competitive than straight bottom feeders. And this Houston team, they really need to build it. Unfortunately, I totally didn't talk about this before, but Sengun went out with an injury a few games ago, and now this sort of puts Houston in a problem, because Sengun is that player that you need to build around, and when he's not there on the team, I'm not entirely sure how much. I don't know if this team can make a play-in push. I don't know if this team is going to be able to make that push to the play-in. I think the play-in is locked for the Lakers and the Golden State Warriors, and no team is going to be able to back them or going to be able to pass them. So I think now Houston should really be on like a tanking mode. They should try to build through the draft now to see if they can get something else for Sengun to work with, because realistically this team isn't going to go nowhere. This team isn't going to make it far, but he suffered a grade 3 sprained ankle and he's going to miss the rest of the season. So with this in mind, I think they should just cancel the rest of the season. Like, that's it for Houston. They should build through that draft. But with that, we are out of time, and that's all the games that ended up going down with the NBA recap. So next we are going to go into the fourth segment where we talk about if Steph Curry is really a point guard or if he's not a point guard, because Isaiah Thomas from the Pistons had a lot to say about that on Draymond Green's podcast. So I'll be right back after this short break.